Hi, team. This is George. We've had a fantastic first 3 weeks. Appreciate all of the effort you've put into our time together and developing uh, your knowledge, understanding, and ability to perform employee development. Because as we've seen, it's not just training. Employee development can come from many different avenues. And we found that out really in the first week when we developed our employee development. We developed our employee development. That's a lot of develops in there, sorry. When we created our employee development um, definition, and we looked at how it would affect what we currently do. And we went ahead and started connecting with SMART goals as well for our own personal development, professional development also. And then week 2, we jumped right into getting our scenarios. And most importantly, we looked at analyzing performance because, in a nutshell, performance is a combination. It's behavior plus outcome equals performance. So, what behaviors are we performing? What outcomes are we getting? And that's our performance. And we looked at that from the perspective of, are the consequences right side up? Because we found that oftentimes people, our highest performers, get the biggest workload. We, as managers, things like that, we need to learn how to adjust to give people who may not be our highest performers that opportunity to be and adjust that workflow so we're not beating up our high performers all the time. Are there other causes? The only time, this is an interesting one, because the only time really that you want training is if it's a lack of skill. Even if it's just knowledge, there's so many other ways to get that knowledge that doesn't require training. It could be a job aid. We're going to make one of those later. Things like that. So always be thinking of, are there other causes? Because probably 80% of the time, training is not the solution. So we always want to kind of keep that in mind. And then we jumped into week 3 when we looked at learning theories and strategies. There were a lot going on here: self-directed learning, rotational stretch assignments, games, creating videos and podcasts, social learning tools. Social learning tools is becoming more and more important. These are becoming a very big deal because no longer are people content with just the intake of knowledge and learning. They want to be a part of it. They want to be creators as well. And there's a lot of people in organizations that are excellent for doing that. So keep your eye on that social learning piece as well. Now, week four is a fantastic week, one of my favorite weeks, because we're looking at feedback. How you give feedback matters. Let's say somebody's not doing something. Manager John is always yelling at his employees whenever they ask him a question. So if I was his director, his manager, I would not just focus on what he's doing wrong. Whenever we give corrective feedback, and that's the difference. Corrective feedback, there's feedback and then there's subtle different types underneath it. Corrective feedback is when you want to change something. If you focus on what went wrong, guess what is going to continue to go wrong because you're not giving that person anything to strive for. So if manager John is continually yelling at his employees every time an employee asks him a question, the feedback that could stop that rather quickly is, "Hi John, I noticed that we have some issues with our employees with you raising your voice when they need to know some sort of data, some material or something like that. That's not helpful for our output productivity. This is what I would like you to do. When someone asks you a question, I would like you to rephrase that question right back to them and then ask for further clarification if you need it, or then give them a response if it is a binary sort of question they have." So you notice what we did was for the feedback to change manager John, what we did was we stated what was wrong, but then we told John exactly the exact steps that we wanted him to accomplish. That is more helpful. If we just say, "Hey, you can't yell at employees," guess what? Not going to work. It'll work for 10 to 20% of the people. But sometimes under a lot of stress and things like that, people act slightly differently, because in business there can be those times when stress hits hard and heavy. You know this, um, being working adult, stress can hit and it can make us act in certain ways. So we're giving John tools as well to help John also. And when he's doing that, that also helps the performance of the organization, because remember, performance is behavior and outcome. So if we're changing John's behavior, the way he reacts with employees, they're going to change their behavior too. So we're having a big effect. So that's corrective feedback. Now you also want to give continuous feedback. So when you see things going right, you want to be able to let people know. If you see just general talking, hey, how is it going? They say something, then you give them some feedback about what's happening. And we're going to get to practice this with our feedback exercise. So it's a two-parter, just like before. So we have our feedback exercise. We have the written assignment. So you're going to create the short scenario where there's need for constructive feedback to a single employee. So you're going to tell us what it is. So you're setting this whole thing up. It could be a part of the scenario. You can work this into the scenario that you're working for our final paper and presentation. That, to me, that's a brilliant way to go, but you do not have to. It is completely up to you. Then you're going to write down how you approach the feedback directly. After noticing a situation, you're going to do it in public, you're going to do it in private. How will you talk to the individual? Keeping comments performance centered. So we want to keep everything performance centered. So where do we want to go? Where do we want to go? We want to be forward looking. We don't want to just look back all the time at what went wrong. We want to look forward on what we can do to be right. That's not saying we don't touch on what went wrong, because they need to know it, but we need to be forward looking from that point on. And then you're going to give video feedback. Make sure the link works. Oops. Well, I'm going to have to fix that link. Then you're going to give the video feedback right there. And this is where it's going to be kind of neat, because if this green button doesn't work for some reason, you can click this link and it will take you to Flipgrid. And then here you're going to actually practice giving the feedback. So you're going to let us know what the situation is. So I'm giving feedback to employee XYZ because of this situation. I'm giving them their feedback in private, and boom, then you jump into the feedback and you actually practice giving it to the employee. So it's kind of fun. In the past, had people actually even use puppets that they talk to, things like that. Feel free to get creative, and just remember to stay focused on performance. You have to hit on the corrective piece, but we also want to focus on the performance, which is behavior and outcome. This is the behavior that I want to see. This is the outcome that is expected, sort of thing. And in that way, it gives people, just like what we have here, our target, gives people a target to hit. So enjoy. Feedback is a big, big deal. It does not have to happen just once a year in performance appraisals or twice a year in performance appraisals. Feedback is a tool that you should use pretty consistently. So have a fantastic week. I look forward to seeing everybody's videos, and I look forward to our discussions.